Is how you say hello the key to a wonderful life? I'm Greg. I'm the Introverted Networker. And today I want to talk about an article I just came across. It was actually written about 2 years ago in 2022 by an individual named James Buckhouse. And I came across this on Medium, which is a writing platform a lot of writers use to kind of get their thoughts out in the world. And actually, Medium recommended this to me. I don't know if it's because of my articles and what I kind of talk about, but I took a look at it and it was an interesting article, but it really made me think a lot about some of the conversations we've had here in the past few newsletter issues, past few podcasts about networking conversations and how those might go, or giving more tips and scripts and ideas on how to have meaningful and fulfilling and productive networking conversations. When I read the article, I don't necessarily disagree with anything that James is saying here. Actually, there's a lot of things I really do agree with. I think there's some things I would add on to. And of course, this will be in the newsletter. The link to the article will be there. And I'll probably call out a couple passages here to really emphasize what it is I'm talking about. But the title of James's article here is How to Say Hello. Simple title. And it's obviously gotten quite a big response. He's got it looks like 1,700 likes or responses. I don't know how many views this article has, but I'm sure it's quite a lot to get that many responses. So a lot of people have read this, and it's great information to really think about how do you introduce yourself, or how do you say hello. And James gets into the evidence that first impressions are really important. First impressions are probably as much as important to anything to a relationship. And he says, it shouldn't be that way, but it really is. And there's some science behind it that says that people make their impression of you in like 1/10 of a second to 7 seconds, and that first impressions can stick with you and sort of influence how you think about somebody. So the idea is that you make a good first impression here, and he goes into some really specific things about how to say the word hello, how to say hello to somebody when you first meet them. And he talks about your voice and your posture and your face, and it's all relaxing, and the idea that when you do this, the way in which you do it could actually influence whether the person wants to talk to you further or not. Again, not disagreeing with anything there. I just think it makes a lot of sense in a group setting where you're meeting somebody from the first time. If you're at an event, if you're at a gathering, if you're potentially meeting somebody you're working for the first time or working with the first time, I actually have a different point of view on working relationships, or what I'll call proximity relationships. And a proximity relationship is based on you're going to be around another person whether you like it or not. And what I mean by that is throughout our lives, we have tons of proximity relationships. We have relationships as children with our classmates, where we go to school, or where our parents go in terms of religious organizations or social organizations, community organizations. We as kids go along with that. We maybe we grow up in neighborhoods, and there's other people that live in those neighborhoods that we don't really choose those people, but we get to know them. And as we go through our lives, as we get older, we continue to have classmates, and sometimes we go to college, or we go to do something else after high school. And again, those people are there and we're there. So we're going to be close and develop relationships, whether we really like it or not. And some of those relationships are good and some are bad. And then we go to work and we have coworkers that we're going to be around every single day. And we can choose a company. Maybe we choose our boss if we say yes to the job. But a lot of our coworkers aren't really our choice. And so we develop relationships there. Again, they may be good, they may be bad, they may be the ones we want to keep. But the idea is that where we are in the world and the people that are around us form the basis of our relationships. So in those cases, while I think a first impression makes a lot of difference, I think that the first impression is also something that can be molded and changed over time because you're going to see that person all the time. So you have a chance to potentially change that first impression. It may never go away, but you can definitely adjust it over time through your continued interaction. For me, the most important impression in a proximity relationship is the last impression, because the last impression is when you're going to stop seeing that person every single day. So, for example, let's say you quit your job, and whether you decide it or your employer decides it, you're leaving the organization. How you leave is what people are going to remember. They're not really going to remember the first time they met you. I mean, they might remember it, but it's not going to be the thing that sticks with them in terms of their impression. How you leave is the most important thing when you leave a job. Did you try to transition? Did you thank people? Were you grateful? Were you gracious? Were you humble? Or did you just go out in a blaze of glory and dump a bunch of work on everybody's plate? In those cases, we call that burning bridges. And some people would say, well, I deserve to burn those bridges. It's your choice. Nobody can stop you from burning bridges. I'm just telling you, the only thing people are going to remember is the last impression they had. You could have done amazing things. And if you pull a Jerry Maguire and you make a big scene and take the goldfish with you, you're going to be remembered for that. Everything else you did goes out the window. And it's actually a cognitive bias called the peak end rule, where we remember the most intense experience and also the last experience. Intensity, you could argue, yeah, maybe people remember this awesome thing you did, but they will definitely remember the last thing that you did. So my point here is, going back to the article and why we're talking about this, is that yes, first impressions I think are important, and how you introduce yourself to someone is important. But keep in mind, as you have work relationships with people, it's more important how you leave. But let's get back to the meeting people here. And that means that, and this could be in a group setting, or this just could be you got introduced to somebody and you're meeting them one-on-one for the first time. So back to networking, we think about our process. You might have started with somebody you knew, had a good conversation with them, had an in-person conversation. You listened to them, you found a way to help them, and then they turned around and said, how can I help you? And you said, I want to get introduced to somebody at this company. So I'm interested in this company. I'd love an introduction. So they say, yeah, I know somebody. They introduce you, and now you're going to meet this person for the first time. Maybe it's in person. Hopefully it's in person. This works better if it's in person. Maybe it's online. Maybe it's through an email. But when you first meet them the first time in person, you're going to want to really think about what that interaction looks like. So again, back to James's article, he tells you how to say hello. Again, talks about lowering your voice, talks about, the way it comes out, how you're standing, all those things, which is great. But then really what I'm more interested in is what happens when you get into that conversation. So after you've introduced yourself, then what? Or not even introduce yourself. After you've said hello, then what? And one of the things I really agree with this article is he talks about trying to uncover something interesting about everyone you come across and you meet. Anyone you say hello to that you're having a conversation with, take responsibility to create an interesting conversation. He actually says that in the article. And the idea is that you're doing that through asking questions of the other person. You're trying to be curious enough to uncover things about them. This is not about you. This is about the other person. And when you do that, as we've talked about before, those people will respond to you more favorably. The interaction will be a whole lot less awkward. Now, another point he brings up is if somebody asks what you do, don't just tell them what your job is, because that is so standard. Look, and I'm going to be honest, I fall into this trap. It's really difficult to come up with this until you have practiced doing this and almost tried it and probably failed a few times. But you almost have to rehearse this. And it's weird to talk about rehearsing conversations with other people, but it will come out a lot better if you actually share this with another person, or you say it in the mirror. You will get more comfortable and it will be more natural. Now, I talked about this in previous issues of the podcast and newsletter about how to craft a great introduction. And that was Clay Hebert's advice from his TEDx talk. But he would say, you should say, I teach X group of people to do X or do Y. So for me, I teach introverts to be better networkers. That's what I would say. What James is saying here is you could do something else. This is another option. This is new. You pick either one. This might be easier for you, which is you say, I have a belief. You tell somebody what you believe. So you create an I believe statement that says something like, I believe in the power of mutually beneficial connections between human beings. And my job, or the thing that I try to do in this world, is to show people how to have better conversations and connections so that they can find opportunities to help each other. I just made that up. That's probably not going to be my final belief statement, but that's kind of my belief statement. So if somebody I met said, Greg, what do you do? I could say I teach introverts to be better networkers, or I could follow with that belief statement that I just said. That is more interesting in a conversation than just what do you do for a living? You're definitely going to get into a deeper conversation with somebody when you start with that. And depending on who the person is and who you are, you're going to potentially break down sort of hierarchical relationships there. Because if you're like a VP of some sort of function or group or whatever at some company, and you're talking to a new hire, a new college graduate, they're going to probably think, I can't have a conversation with this person. But if you start with what you do in terms of teaching people things or what you believe, you're definitely going to open that up, because that idea is something that people can connect with and relate to on their level, wherever that is. Those are, some of the really good things in this article. I really enjoyed reading it, and I wanted to share it with you because there's a lot of people out there that will give you advice about networking. And I give advice all the time that's very, I would say, tactical oriented or focused on something other than actually talking and having conversations. But the real key to networking, and I don't even like the word networking. I would love to come up with a new term for it. I don't know if it's professional circle of influence or trust, or if it's professional communities or personal communities. I might ask my readers and give them a poll and say, like, what would you rather call it than networking? Because my vision for the world is that we come up with a new term and new mindset for networking, because the one we have, when you say networking to anybody, most people cringe. There's so many negative associations with the word networking. I would love to come up with something that's universally understood to mean talking to people on a professional level, building professional relationships that work for both parties, and something that continues to grow throughout your lifetime. The point I'm making is, a lot of times I talk about how to connect on LinkedIn, how to download your connections, how to manage your connections, how to make your list of people, what to say, what to give, all those things. But when it gets right down to it, this is about basic human conversation and communication. And I say basic, but I feel like we've kind of forgotten what basic human communication looks like. There's a bit of an art to it, and there are things you can do to be better at it. I am not perfect. I am probably towards the bottom end of average on this, if even average. I'm always trying to get better. So things like this article really make me stop and read it and try to put the advice into my own interactions and communications. And that's why I wanted to share it with you today. Wanted to talk a little bit about it. Let me know what you think of it. If this is the kind of information you're looking for from this podcast, this video, this newsletter, if these are things that are helpful to you, let me know. If they're not, tell me what it is that you'd like me to talk about or address when it comes to networking. That's what I'm here to do. Like I said, teach introverts to be better networks. Really, honestly, I talk about the introvert thing, but this is for everybody. This stuff would work whether you're introvert or extrovert or ambivert or whatever you consider yourself. This is things that's applicable to everybody, and nobody is natural at this. It's something you got to work through and work on. Hopefully that's helpful. I hope you found some value in that this week. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Reach out to me. Tell me how things are working. Follow me on LinkedIn. check out the podcast, check out the video. Any way I can possibly connect with people, I'm doing this across multiple forms of media so that I can get to more people. Have a great week. Go out, try saying hello in a different way to some people, having some in-person conversations. Let me know how it goes. As always, get out there and always be connecting.